Coming up, an Indiana couple take on a mansion and get a mystery.
Do you have any misgivings about living in the funeral home?
But did they also get priceless windows?
These are great.
Our expert tells them what they're worth. And a North Carolina home turns up a message from beyond the grave.
We felt like we had a direct communication with the past.
Then, a backyard renovation reveals this South Carolina home's forgotten past.
By the time we were finished, we couldn't believe it.
Next on If Walls Could Talk. Hi, I'm Mike Siegel. Our first homeowners were excited to turn this old funeral home into their home. But as they worked to breathe new life into the place, they realized it was hiding an electrifying secret.
You might call it a nightmare, but for Rick and Linda Ferguson, this 16,000 square foot funeral home in Seymour, Indiana was a dream come true.
Do you have any misgivings about living in the funeral home?
Not at all.
No.
That's because Rick's a funeral director, and the Georgian Revival-style mansion was a perfect fit for his business, even if it did need a little restoration.
It needed some updating. She's a grand old lady that needed just a little fixing up.
Right now we're working on the pillars in the front, stripping, burning the paint off, and then painting them after that. So it's a longer process than I had anticipated.
Inside, the couple was amazed at the home's elegant features, like high coffered ceilings, hand-carved fireplace mantels, and stunning stained glass windows.
So we're in downstate Indiana. Now, would this be a window or a winder?
I'm from Illinois, it's a window.
Okay. So this beautiful stained glass window, this must have caught your eye the minute you saw it.
Oh, it's striking from the lobby downstairs, yes.
And it didn't take long before they realized their mansion came with a mystery. It began in the attic, where Rick and Linda made a series of electrifying discoveries.
When we first moved into the house, we come up and down these stairs a lot, and with the sun coming in those windows, you can't see that up there. So I didn't know it was up there, and you walk by this ladder and you say, what's that ladder for?
Rick was curious where the ladder went, so he mustered up the courage to climb it. At the top, he found an old electrical switch that looked straight out of a horror movie. What was it for? Rick kept exploring, and when he got to the third floor, he found a huge empty room with a chalkboard on the wall. When he looked closer, he saw hundreds of names and dates written on it.
So walking in here for the first time, what did you think?
We were shocked at the condition it was still in. It is a remarkable room. It's certainly not something you see in your home every day. So it was exciting for us.
Was the upstairs once a classroom? Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Linda found a strange button next to the fireplace. It looked like a doorbell ringer.
We ended up trying to pry it loose and found out it wasn't a bell at all.
Oh, what have we got there?
It actually is a wall safe.
No kidding. It fooled me.
And it fooled us.
A secret wall safe in a funeral home? What was that for? The Fergusons' curiosity was growing. Linda made the next discoveries in a cluttered storage room. That's where she found an antique spinning wheel. Who left that behind? There was also an old shipping ticket that said Blish Milling Company. Could the name Blish be connected to the house? It was time to get the lowdown on their funeral home's past. So the Fergusons dug up some old county records and learned that their home was built in 1897 by a man named M.S. Blish.
The Blishes were known in Seymour because they took the high-quality protein wheat that Jackson County produces and they milled it into flour. They sold the flour to the Army during World War I.
That explained the shipping ticket from the Blish mill, but what about that creepy electric switch in the attic? It turns out this was the first electrified house in Seymour, Indiana, but there wasn't enough power to go around.
Well, during the day, the power went to the mill across town.
But at night, old Mr. Blish would climb to the top of that ladder and throw the switch that diverted the electricity to his house.
Wow. So he just basically took his power from his work. So
Yeah, correct.
it's good to own the company then,
That's
apparently.
right.
Ooh, light. Very handy.
And it turns out the wife of the original owner was a local teacher.
She taught one of the first kindergartens in Seymour, Indiana, and this was her schoolroom. This has been part of Seymour's history for a very, very long time.
Today, Rick and Linda let guests sign the chalkboard, like a guest book.
And you are certainly welcome to do that too, Mike.
Absolutely. Okay. The only time my name was on the blackboard at school was when I was in trouble. So, am I in trouble?
Not today.
Okay, good. Okay. How's this?
That is wonderful.
As for the spinning wheel, Linda learned it was one of Mrs. Blish's prized possessions.
We'd heard family stories that there was a spinning wheel always placed in front of the stained glass window. And now that we've rediscovered it, it's nice to know that it's been restored back to its original position.
You don't use this every day?
No.
Yeah.
The Fergusons learned the Blish family demanded the best and even had those windows shipped over from Europe. And Mrs. Blish used that hidden wall safe to store her jewelry. The Fergusons also found a marble urn and pedestal that looks pretty fancy. Seems like the Blishes had expensive taste. And Rick and Linda can't help wondering if some of the furnishings they left behind could be worth big bucks. And they're about to find out.
Hi, Rick. I'm Darren.
Because we invited appraiser Darren Lawson over to check it all out. Will Darren think the antique urn is a collector's dream?
This is gypsum alabaster, not marble.
Do the handcrafted fireplace mantles have money to burn?
An old salt glazed tile.
Will the stained glass windows make Darren see the light?
Wow. I've never seen windows like this in a home in this kind of original condition with this kind of design. These are great.
The Fergusons will have to wait until Darren's done investigating to find out. Just ahead, a North Carolina couple turns up a strange building in their backyard. Then, finding mysterious pictures in a South Carolina home.
The puzzle was to find out who they were.
Plus, will our Indiana homeowners get good news? Is their home's stained glass worth a fortune?
You could probably expect to sell for as much as...
Our appraiser tells them what they've got when we return.
When our next couple first stepped into their charming colonial, it was like walking back in time. But when they started to fix the place up, they discovered their home came with a scholarly mystery.
Jessica and Anthony Graber needed a new home for their growing family. That's when they found this solid 1927 colonial revival in Wake Forest, North Carolina.
What they built with back in those days is unmatched these days.
The Grabers fell in love with the home's original features, including the grand staircase, the living room chandelier, and even the custom wallpaper.
That's why we bought the house, because it is so unique.
But the 3,800 square foot home wasn't all good.
It was in rough shape. It needed a lot of work.
The first couple weeks here were spent just cleaning up.
And once they got busy, they found their one-of-a-kind home had a history to match. It began as Anthony was working in the yard.
I started to pull the ivy back, and as I was trimming, I found a piece of the wall.
The more he trimmed, the more wall he saw.
As we found that it wasn't just a little 6-foot wall, it went the whole length of the property. My wife and I were actually pretty excited.
Anthony wondered who built the wall and when.
Judging by the amount of moss, we knew they had been covered for a long time.
He also uncovered a set of granite steps and some matching pillars. Where did they come from?
The pillars are definitely very unique and, a very good topic of conversation.
Next, at the edge of the yard, Jessica and Anthony ran across what looked like a big screened porch.
We came in and found the slate floor and then looked over and saw this stove, this grill and stove, and there's ovens here.
Did someone once live back there?
It was a bit confusing as to why this elaborate shelter and floor and water would be built this far back from the house.
And there was more waiting inside the house.
We spent a lot of time taking things out of the basement.
As Jessica and her daughter Erin were cleaning the basement, they came across a stack of dusty papers, including a booklet labeled Wake Forest College and documents from the Red Cross. Did a student once live there and work for the Red Cross? Next, they dug up a metal cake tin that looked like it had been there for years.
And we lifted the top, and there were some letters.
And not just any letters, they were love letters written in the 1920s.
Dear Teddy, what in the world has become of you?
They were signed with the initials ACR. But who was Teddy and who was ACR?
When we found the letters, Aaron and I were so excited because we felt like we had a direct communication with the past.
And there was more. The envelope had a name on it, Eleanor Jones. Dying for answers, Jessica did some research and learned that ACR stood for Dr. Albert C. Reed.
We've learned that Dr. Reed was a philosopher and a doctor of philosophy at Wake Forest University.
Aha! That explains the university booklet they found in the basement. But what about the name Teddy they found in the love letters? Turns out that was old Dr. Reed's pet name for the woman who later became his wife.
We thought it was cute, just really precious that they had these nicknames for each other before they were married.
And the Red Cross papers? They belonged to Eleanor too.
Eleanor Reed was definitely respected among the women in the community.
Her work for the Red Cross included typing medical reports.
The diagnosis, pregnancy. Prognosis, good. Wire sent.
But what about the fancy stonework Anthony found outside? He learned the granite pillars and steps were a wedding gift from Mrs. Reed's family who lived in Stone Mountain, Georgia.
It's a very heavy wedding gift, I would say. And this came by train up to Wake Forest back when the house was built, probably in 1927.
But there was still one mystery left to solve. What was that little cookhouse out back for? The Grabers learned it was built in the 1940s when the Reeds threw a debutante party for their daughter and wanted a little more room for guests.
It tells us that they love family and they really like to celebrate life. And I think they did that with this house.
And the Grabers have already started to carry on the tradition.
I see us restoring it to the point that we can really hold some fun parties in the yard. And we've talked about our daughter's wedding being here, and she's only 10, so.
Until then, the family will continue restoring and enjoying what the Reeds built almost a century ago.
At one point, it was the centerpiece in Wake Forest. I've just wanted to bring it back to the way it once was.
And they plan to keep it a centerpiece for generations to come. Up next, a mysterious building turns up in this South Carolina backyard.
By the time we were finished, we couldn't believe it.
Then, did our Indiana mansion come packed with valuable antiques?
These are great.
Our expert breaks the news you won't want to miss when we come back.
Our next homeowner just knew her old Victorian had a story to tell, but she had no idea where to look. That is until she uncovered a forgotten box that tied her home to a musical master.
When Catherine Fleming Bruce and her son Alaric stumbled across this long-neglected Victorian in Columbia, South Carolina, they were instantly drawn to it.
It just had some element of beauty, some element of grace to it.
Built in 1900, the 1,800-square-foot home was located in the city's historic Waverly neighborhood. And Catherine was amazed at how much of that history she'd discover right in her own backyard. It began as she was clearing away an old pile of wood.
And as we tore these pieces of wood away, a fabulous brick pattern just made itself evident. And by the time we were finished, we couldn't believe it.
Under the wood, Catherine had discovered an old brick building. When she went back to check the property maps, it wasn't there.
This neighborhood is in a historic district, but that building had been missed. So even they didn't know what a find that was.
A little more digging and Catherine learned it was a carriage house, quite a luxury in its day. Catherine had to find out who built it and when.
How far down the rabbit hole can we go? That's what I wanted to know.
She got her next clue when she started cleaning out the carriage house.
There was so much junk and so much dirt. I was only in the mind of getting stuff out of there.
As she worked, she pulled out a classic English teapot.
Who would expect to see something beautiful like that? But I was amazed to find it wasn't broken. You know, the top and the bottom were both there.
Had a proper English lady left her teapot in the carriage house?
To me, this was one more clue that there was more to this story that I wanted to discover.
As she continued cleaning, Catherine found an old watering can. Who was the gardener who left this behind? And there was more. In a forgotten corner, Catherine noticed a box covering a pile of old newspaper.
I thought there was nothing more to find, and these newspapers are there.
Inside were photos of a man and a woman. They looked like they had been taken a long time ago.
And the puzzle was to find out who they were.
Did the people in the pictures once live in the house? Catherine learned the people in the photographs were the home's original owners, a husband and wife named Caroline and William Arthur. Caroline was the daughter of a wealthy business owner. No wonder she was able to afford such a well-built carriage house. Catherine also learned the home was sold in 1913 to a man named Barrett Wysanska.
Barrett Wysanska was a Polish immigrant and one of the Jewish leaders of the community. He was one of the founders of the Tree of Life congregation in Columbia, which is still in existence today.
The Wysanska family included noted musicians like grandson Herbert Goodkind, who earned an international reputation for his book on Stradivari violins. Catherine believes his family used that teapot to serve refreshments during afternoon music recitals. The home stayed in the family until 1938. That's when Catherine learned it was sold to a woman named Julia Starks.
When I saw the name Julia Starks, I had to stop. I said, well, that's a familiar name. I've heard Starks before.
Starks was the wife of Dr. John J. Starks, who was president of Benedict College, a historically African-American college just down the street.
So he spent a lifetime working to improve African-American institutions of higher education.
His wife Julia also worked at the school as the dean of women. Catherine believed they took great pride in their home and gardened in their spare time and probably left that watering can in the carriage house. But it didn't stop there. Catherine found a copy of Dr. Stark's autobiography, and it included a picture of her home.
It looks very different than it looked today.
Catherine learned that her home was originally a two-story house, but the second story was destroyed by a fire.
This picture in Dr. Stark's book was the only picture that I was able to find of the house before the fire.
Today, Catherine is thrilled to have solved her home's mysteries and is inspired by the people who lived here.
The history of the house has made it more important to me. I feel like a steward of that story. I feel like a steward of the property, making sure that it continues to be here as a residence in the community.
And she hopes to add her own chapter to the story for future generations to enjoy. Still ahead, is our Indiana couple in for a shock?
The leading on the window is in excellent condition.
Could their home's windows be worth a fortune?
You could probably expect to sell for as much as...
The incredible appraisal is next on If Walls Could Talk.
Rick and Linda Ferguson were amazed when they discovered their classic home was filled with European windows and antique furniture that could be worth big bucks. But are they? Well, they're about to find out as our expert drops by to tell them what it's all worth.
The Fergusons were amazed to discover their 16,000 square foot Greek revival in Seymour, Indiana was built by a wealthy family who made their fortune in the milling business. They were even more amazed to find out how much the family left behind. Everything from the hand-carved pillars and fireplace mantels to the European stained glass windows looked impressive and valuable.
This is amazing. Did you have to do any work to it or anything like that?
No, we bought it just like it is.
They also found elaborate furnishings like this large urn and pedestal that the original owners had left behind. Now the Fergusons can't help wondering what all this stuff might be worth. And they're about to find out.
Hi, Rick. I'm Darren.
Because we invited appraiser Darren Lawson over to take a look. Beginning with the urn and pedestal, Rick and Linda think it was imported from Italy and made of marble. But Darren pegs the urn as being made of alabaster.
The size of the urn itself is larger than most other examples of alabaster carved during that period. So that makes it pretty unique, pretty desirable. I think that could sell for $2,000.
Hey!
Really?
$2,000. Next, Darren turns up the heat with the home's hand-carved fireplace mantels.
Nice form, kind of imitates arts and crafts a little bit.
Sounds promising.
They're both quarter sawn oak and oak veneer. The one on the main floor really does a nice job. It actually mimics the Greek Revival columns outside and inside the home. It carries that same pattern all the way through the main floor of the house.
And the fireplace upstairs?
It has more detail on it, more beading, and the tile on that is very possibly an Ohio tile manufacturer, ceramics specializing in porcelain. That salt glazing on that tile tells you that it's period correct.
So, are the Fergusons looking at a fortune in fireplaces?
Those two pieces, if you were to sell them, could probably sell for as much as $5,000.
Hey, $5,000.
All right.
$5,000! And Darren saved the best for last. The home's original stained glass windows.
They're late Victorian in style. The use of the alternating fleur-de-lis and what I believe to be a cross would have been just a design.
The couple believes the windows were imported from France.
The leading on the window is in excellent condition. You've got these bullseye jewels. I like the patina that it's now showing with a little bit of color loss. I like that. That shows me it's original and old.
But will the value get better with age?
If you were to market this set on the open market, you could probably expect to sell for as much as $15,000.
15,000 bucks. Wow, $15,000. So don't,
Don't let the
Be
kids
rough
throw
around.
a basketball.
Exactly.
Altogether, Darren's found a total of $22,000 worth of fixtures and furnishings in the home. But the Fergusons have no plans to part with any of it.
She's still a grand lady. She needs to be preserved and so that she can be passed on to the next generation.
And the couple hopes to share their grand lady and all that came with her with their guests far into the future.
I'm Mike Siegel. More mysteries next time on If Walls Could Talk. When our next couple first step, God, there was an extra step there. When they discovered their classic home was filled with antique furniture and lots of stuff. Let there be light.